Hello everyone. How are y'all doing today? Hopefully well. Feeling quite a bit tired today, so I actually have some caffeine with me. We'll see if it'll carry me through this. But yeah, it's already Thursday. It's already... I don't even know. Yesterday was supposed to be my day off, and then I proceeded to... Oh, hey Lux, how you doing? Pretty much worked all day yesterday, unfortunately. How you doing, Lux? We're getting right back on that train of trying to finish up this map. I don't know how much we're going to be able to get done today before we just transition to something else, but I'm hoping to get through it. All right. Well, I don't see a whole lot of reason why not just get right into it. Oh, actually, one second. Unfortunately, all the things that I had open, I don't know if this happens to y'all, but for me, my computer just randomly reset in the middle of the night. So all of my stuff, oh, it saved it. Excellent. So y'all see it right off the rip. Because this is what we were talking about last time, was determining what landmarks we wanted to keep and how many houses that we wanted to put in. Because the more houses that we have, the more voices that we have to put in the game. And the more points of interest we have, the more complex the game gets. So we have to have enough where it's interesting and believable, but not so much that we like scope creep. You know what I mean? So... And we could potentially go into a little more details as far as like the family dynamics and things like this, and talking about how different families have different backgrounds that you can utilize that information as far as determining whether or not a mimic is an actual mimic or not. But that also seems like a higher level thing. We're still trying to figure out the basics. So, we have 5 different groupings of locations. We have spooky locations. These locations don't really play any in-depth factor beyond just it creates really good opportunities to create a like spooky atmosphere. So this is abandoned ice cream truck at a park, abandoned buildings, a laundromat. I don't know why I think laundromat is an excellent place to have one, but in my head it makes sense. And then we have a church graveyard, which we can kind of play around with. As far as the effects on the actual voices on the phone calls, for it to have like an echoey effect, and I think that would be kind of cool. And then some of them are just like, I'm stubborn, right? So like, I think a small town will have a community center. I think a small town would have an alcohol store, and I think a small town would have a church / graveyard. But all 3 of those, I'm not 100% convinced are like worth it. And I also think that having this many different types, or this many different points of interest, what was it, 13? If I remember correctly? Yeah, 13 are enough. Or not even enough, they're too much. Because... what do we got to take into account, Lux? Yeah. They need jobs. Well, that's how we kind of split it up, is that we took the 13 points of interest. We took about an approximation of how many people it would take in order to work there, minimally. And then we used that as a determinant of how many houses we need, which we found to be 23 houses. For 13 points of interest, we would need 23 houses, aka we would have 23 plus 13, 36. We would have 36 locations on the map, which is a lot of locations. A lot of locations. When I was first thinking about a map, I was thinking like 10, like total. And so I'm like, but we can kind of cut that a little bit depending, right? For instance, if we decided like, you know what, let's nix the school. Just no, they go to a nearby other school, right? Well, if we did that, we can subtract a good amount of people from that, because it takes about, I mean, does it take more than 5 people to run a school? Oh, 100%. But we're kind of having like a minimum representation kind of deal, where it's like, sure, there's a lot more people in order to run a small school, but when I think of like, when I boil it down to the necessary jobs, I think of like a principal, a teacher, a lunch lady, and a janitor. No, I feel like there was one more. Maybe there was like a couple teachers. Anyway, I don't remember what my train of thought was as far as why I chose 5. But when I think of like really small, you know? And then abandoned buildings, obviously 0. Laundromat, you might have like a maintenance guy who comes through and like gets the money, but I see them as not as they live there and then that's their income. I see them more as like a guy who lived in a nearby city is installing them around in small cities, and they just go around and collect the profit accordingly. So it would be 0. But that's why I kind of want to look through, see if we can either come up with ways to kind of bring it down, or if we spend a good amount of time trying to get this down and we just can't, then at that point we just try to make the map with the 36 landmarks that we have. If possible, I would like to see if I can get that down to 30. Like, get it down to like a good even number, you know what I mean? I feel like that would make it, I wouldn't say easier, but easier. All right, so the park the spooky locations I'm hesitant to remove, because like good locations that create good atmospheres are going to be part of what kind of it's the spice, you know. It may not be the meat and potatoes, but it's the spice of the game. And a good meal could be ruined with not enough salt, you know what I mean? And then gameplay focused locations, I really don't want to touch those, because those are the ones that actually, like, they have locations, they have purpose, they have meaning. So hardware store being ways for people to bunker down, gas station car repair allows people to actually leave, and cable company news network allows you to give people like a heads up, right? Consequence locations, those are also, they kind of play similarly to gameplay focused locations, except the exception is there is no real positive side. So for gameplay focused locations, it's like, oh, if you utilize it correctly, you get an advantage in that game, and then if you lose it, it gives you a consequence that was more than just a lack of a benefit. You know what I mean? Some places are just like, Well, the consequence is you just don't have access to that cool thing anymore. And that's not really a consequence. That's just a lack of a benefit. A consequence itself is kind of just half of that, where if you have the vet, nothing really happens. There's really no, like, nothing that really comes about it in a positive way besides just, you know, people working there and taking care of animals. But if you lose the vet, now you get to a point where, like, now there's animals everywhere. So when people call, there's animals going off in the background, and now you can't use that as a way to determine if it's a mimic or not. Right? It's now it's a constant factor. It is no longer, it is a false positive. That's something to explore. Hold on. Make people seem off in some way to add more of a creepy vibe, maybe? Oh yeah, no. Like, the people are going to be... There's going to be 3 different kind of ways that the people are going to be a little bit off as far as mimics. One is going to be... And it's going to go from easiest to hardest. The easiest is going to be vocal variation, where they are going to talk like this, like, except, you know, better. And it will be like, oh, obvious, they're not talking like a normal person, so of course they're a mimic. The second one is where they sound perfectly fine, but they're not making a whole lot of sense. They're just saying, they don't really understand how a sentence is structured. They've heard the words before, so it's kind of like parroting, where they say a sentence, but they may not understand the whole sentence. And then you have the third and hardest one, where it's more of a context thing, where it's they fail in a context sense of like, hey, let's see, a good example is, it's like, oh, sorry about that. My wife just went to bed, and I'm being really quiet while I'm calling you. I don't know why you would say that in a 911 call, but this is just an example I thought of. And then you find out that the man doesn't have a wife. And you're just like, oh. So, like, you have to, for the third version, you have to, like, know. You have to kind of gain that kind of insight through some of the more red herring information that is in the earlier in the game. But there are other things happening in the background that I wanted to impact, where, like, the sound of glass breaking, whether the imposters are breaking in, or animals freaking out. And then the animals freaking out is the vet buildings, kind of like, if you lose the vet, that means you can't use animals freaking out as a clue anymore, because it's a consistent thing. So you lose one of the weapons that you have to determine something, which is interesting, but I don't know if it's interesting enough. And for the hospital, I don't know. I kind of put hospital similar to, like, multiple connections, but if you lose a hospital, you can't send injured people there. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Do I want to, like, should there be a scenario where someone is injured and needs to go to a hospital? I think yes, because otherwise, why would you even send an ambulance? Why would you even have the ambulance in the game if sending people who are injured to a hospital wasn't a thing? So if there's an ambulance, there needs to be a hospital, is where I'm currently at. Where it would feel weird if you had one and not the other. And then we can have hospital be a combination of consequence, location, and a multiple connection. And I know it's going to go red, but that's because I framed it not to duplicate. But we know we're duplicating hospital here. Because in the multiple connections category, the only real, it's similar to, like, consequence locations, in that there is a consequence, but consequence location specifically is about like a core gameplay consequences, whereas multiple locations, excuse me, sorry, the caffeinated drink is the caffeinated drink is sparkling, so I keep burping. So I apologize. But the multiple connections, what they do is that when you fail, the game gets a lot harder. In that, like most locations, especially houses, right? If a house gets taken over by a mimic, you as the player now kind of know what direction they would go. Or at least the option, not necessarily the direction they would go, but the connections that are connected to it. That is like, okay, I need to keep an eye out on the surrounding possibilities of how it could go. So let's see if I can pull this up real quick. There we go. So if we pull up our little map, our map that we've made so far, but definitely too small. A good example is that, let's say we have a house, right? And then we have a house here. We have a house here. And then we have a house like way over here. Right? And then we also have a house over here. It's way too random, but you get what I'm saying. And then this house gets taken over. So you're keeping an eye on this house. You're keeping an eye on this house. You might keep an eye on this house, even though it's really far. But you probably don't have to worry about this house, because it would definitely go to this house first, right? So that's what I mean as far as proximity, is that a lot of these houses are going to only have like one or two options. Or two or three options, but then the bigger places are gonna have like 8 options, and you're just like, oh, if that gets taken, I'm really not gonna have any kind of idea what's happening. So so multiple connections is kind of like that. I also think that multiple connections, I really only think we need like 2. Let's see if we can minus like 1 or 2 of these. So the general store and the school, actually, let's see something. Is there situations where the community store is, or not the community store, the school is the community center? Because if we can combine them, because I know some of the things that we did before was that we combined a lot of them, like gas station as well as a car repair, like a repair shop. Having a gas station / car repair shop just makes sense to combine. Can school be a community center? Schools as community centers are considered those educational institutions which serve not only school community, but are open to the service of all members of the community. Kind of sounds to me that we got a school community center. Had a school community center? Where it wasn't just a school, it was like a combination of a community center and a school. That's awesome. So we're gonna do... We're just gonna do school / community center. Oh, gas station repair store. Gotcha. And then we have a general store. And maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we just need to combine shit. For instance, what if we combined hospital with a vet? That also kind of makes sense, doesn't it? However, that also makes it too powerful. You know what I mean? I feel like the consequence that happens when you lose a hospital is already pretty big. To then also make it so that it's mixed with the consequence of being losing a vet at the same time. It's like, not only can you not help hurt like people who are injured anymore, but also there are dogs everywhere. It's like that's a lot. Like if you start as a nomad, you start as at a car repair shop / gas station. Honestly, I need to play Cyberpunk. I've heard nothing but good things, with the exception of, like, you know, the bugs and issues that it had at launch, but I've heard that's been fixed for a long time now. And I had the urge to try it since the new DLC dropped. So let's not, though the hospital / vet, let's do some more Googling. Bugs have been fixed on everything that isn't on a PS4. Yeah. Are there hospitals and vets / vets? There's animal. It's just between animal hospital and a vet. Ooh, that's a good question. Services. Animal hospitals typically offer a wider range of services and more specialized options compared to clinics. Can hospitals and vets be the same building? Doesn't really look it. It looks like there's just a thing called an animal hospital, and then that's fine. Which is perfect for a poor person stuck with a PS4. Bro, I still have my PS4. I don't know what you mean. The perfect time to get a PS5 was during like the whole COVID thing, and there was such low supply of it. I just never got it. And then by the time I could get it, I was like, is it worth it? It's not really worth it, in my opinion. I just kind of upgraded my PC and was just fine with it. Actually, I don't know if the cost of video cards are still really, really expensive at the moment, but like, at least for a while, it was definitely one of those things where I was like, man, I built my computer at a perfect time. So, all right. So we're not combining vet and hospital. We can say vet as an animal hospital, but we'll get to that. We have a hardware store. Could we combine the alcohol store with anything? Bro, what sad place would it be if we did an alcohol store / laundromat? Would that sound... That sounds so sad. That sounds so sad. Where it's just like, hey, while you're waiting for your clothes to dry, how about some booze? I like it how in Zombie Apocalypse, vets are the only doctors yet. I mean, you're not wrong. You're really not wrong. I don't really see... I mean, we could do alcohol store / general store. which it could be interesting, but man, is general store just one of those things that's like, what does it serve? I don't see a lot of opportunity as far as utilizing a general store in a horror sense. No one's gonna be there. It's like, this is all happening in one night, right? So the game starts in the evening. Yeah, I imagine it does. Yeah, I agree. I agree that it does get annoying. But like, the game starts in the evening with the sun setting, and then by the time, like, the game ends before the sun gets up, right? There isn't really like a countdown clock. There isn't about you're supposed to survive the night. This is one of those things where you are going to lose. It's just how quickly are you going to lose? And you fighting a force that is beyond your power to fight against is kind of a particular kind of dread that I want to play with. So I have to think of it in the sense of like, what if these things are open, as far as these points of interest, would they be open? Would they have people in it? Would it be something a mimic would be interested in habitating? And if so, why? So a lot like in an abandoned building, for example, it could be utilized in the sense of it could be taken over, but no one is there, so no one calls 911. But the reason I liked abandoned buildings is that teenagers. It's a really good opportunity for an interaction with teenagers. Being there when they're not supposed to. They snuck out. They're going to drink alcohol, right? We could do alcohol store / abandoned buildings, but honestly, that just sounds sad. Like the laundromat alcohol store is funny sad. Alcohol store abandoned, like an abandoned alcohol store. That doesn't feel like small town. That feels post-apocalyptic. And I don't want to give the impression that this is post-apocalypse. This is just a small town. We're not going to do... I'm trying to plug in this alcohol store. Alcohol store plus hardware store. Hey, here's some power tools. Also, here's a beer. Nope. I think the one that makes the most sense is general store. I never played any of the games. Give them a Randy. Randy's always around. What's a Randy? Is a Randy it's like an alcohol store? Let's see. Randy store. Oh, hardware. It's a hardware store. Got it. Randy's Do It Best Hardware. Okay. No, it's just a guy. Oh. It's just a dude. You know what? What if we make our the person who never leaves you, the ride or die? What if we make the ride or die Randy? That'd be pretty funny. Let's see here. Let's just do like names. Randy, the ride or die coworker. There you go. There you go, Randy. Dave. Or is it Dave? We'll throw in a Dave too. Because you were thinking of who would be in being blank. Yeah. Yeah. I can see, actually, you know what? No. Randy, we're gonna have Randy work at the gas station. You've been demoted, Randy. I can see Randy being like, Randy down at the gas station? Yeah, you know, he's still working there. I'll figure where to put Randy. So yeah, alcohol store, general store makes sense. Ryan and Dave's song, good song by Rare Americans. Never heard of that one. But the problem with the general store, alcohol store is they would be closed. So why would anyone go there? Why would anyone go there? Like, why would the mimics go there? They're not looking for a bag of chips on the side of a person, you know? They're not looking to have a good mixed cocktail. Why are they going to a general store / alcohol store and using that? Because Randy's there? Why is Randy there then? Why is Randy at a closed alcohol / general store? Oh, he's just always around. You know, I did say I wanted a homeless guy who the player doesn't know if it's a mimic or just a homeless man. Load-bearing vagrant. Squatters? Do small towns have squatter problems? I feel like I don't know enough about small towns. Maybe Randy is the town janitor then. And then he just cleans up the town. And that's his whole thing, is that he goes to, and he gets to be in any building because he cleans every building. Pulling a hell of a paycheck. That is interesting though. Like Santa. I don't know, the idea of squatters in a horror game is funny. That's fair. I don't know. Squatters build traps? Is that a real thing? Is this like Home Alone shit? Like, what the hell? Let me see this. Do squatters have rights? My god. Do squatters build traps? They think I mean like squatting like the exercise, because the response I got was they strengthen the upper back. Squatter. Man, squatters are really awesome. They build your back muscles up. That's pretty good. Squatters build traps in houses. Let's specify that. Squatters set up tripwires, booby traps on a family's property. What kind of Home Alone fucking nonsense is this? That is crazy. That's funny though. It's funny. All right. Okay. So, alcohol store / general store. It could be. We could spin it. It could be, a restock employee coming in early in the early mornings for restocking the supplies that they come in every few days. You know, they're not going to do it during like peak hours. They're going to do it in the night when everyone's asleep, right? So we could have that be a response. So I guess the question is, if we can just pretend. Let's pretend that we came up with a good enough reason why someone would be in there. Now, can we think of a good scenario that could be created from the general store being taken over that would either impact the gameplay or would like create a very good atmosphere for the game? Because I don't. Besides just like people can't, like, it would be completely different story if this was over the span of like a week. You know what I mean? Where we go 5 Nights at Freddy's, where we go 5 days in, and it's like, cool, you lost the general store, people can't eat anymore, which is a lot more of a factor in play versus one night where it's like, oh no, I can't go get snacks. Where it's like everyone's gonna be dead by the morning. First let's combine it. Alcohol store / general store. So but at the same time, not having a general store / alcohol store in a small town feels odd to me. It feels like they should have it. So it makes me think we need to come up with a good reason. So let's do this. Let's add this. This is what do they do? This one was created. Create a tense atmosphere with ice cream music happening in the background. Hardware store allows players, or no, allows the people to barricade themselves after surviving or by listening to warnings. Then we have the community center and school. Community center was literally just a place where people are sent to, but like that's also kind of like meh, right? Hospital, I like my adults / children here. I don't know why there's an S there, but there is. And okay, so hospital cures sick people and helps prevent deaths. School is kind of the same as community center. I don't really know what purpose, like we combined school community center. Okay, cool, great. But what does that do? What are we doing with it in the middle of the night? I at least have a better picture in my head as far as making a tense atmosphere in a school where there's like a janitor or something, and it's like there's something here, and you can hear it echoing down the halls, and like he's locked in the janitor's closet and things of that nature. And then it would make sense to me from a school perspective as far as there being a lot of residential houses near a school, because at least in my experience, families who are raising children want to be close by a good school, so that they don't have to worry about commuting there every day, or at least are within the district necessary to go to that school, right? Abandoned buildings. This is We're gonna say narrative. Actually, this is what we'll do. Purpose, and then description. Boom, boom, and then purpose is narrative. This is gameplay. So we're splitting them up as far as the reason why we have them is for a narrative reason versus a gameplay reason. Gas station, car repair, gameplay. The abandonment abilities. Narrative is that teenagers sneak in to smoke/drink and get ambushed. And I have one in my head where like teenagers were exploring because of a dare, and then their parents, one of them made their parents take their younger brother because they lied about where they were going, and then the younger brother gets attacked by a mimic, and then they call 911 because you gotta have to think how teenagers would react, and how bad does it have to get for a teenager to call 911. And pretty much it has to be literally life-threatening. In which they, like, Scooby-Doo is believable to a certain degree. Where it's like, we're not gonna call the cops, we're just gonna run, or we're gonna fight back, or like, we're not gonna call the cops here. But the other thing is, if they're going to get in trouble with their parents, they would rather deal with cops. At least from my opinion, is that they would rather deal with cops than their own parents' ire. So, because the first thing they're going to say is, don't tell my dad. Don't tell my mom. It's like, I need help, but please don't tell my parents. And it's not that weird backward stuff where it's just like, oof. So I definitely, I like that idea. I've fallen in love with it, of utilizing that in that way. Granted, you know, what was the phrase? Murder your darlings. Don't be afraid to remove things that you love. So the gameplay are as far as between narrative or gameplay, and we have to choose between the two, we're choosing gameplay because we're making a game. So we want things. Honestly, what we should do, the best case scenario, is both. We have a gameplay positive negative, but also a very good narrative positive negative, right? We just got to get creative. Gas station car repair allows people to leave without dying. And I think we already discussed in the past, as far as the beginning of the game, not everyone is there, right? We have 23 houses, and I think I will have like a random 5. A random 5 of those houses are going to be empty. In which those people were just like out of town. So, because to me, in a horror situation, I think a lot of people would just pack up their car and leave. Some people will bunker down. Some people will just get in the car and then head out. And I think not creating the environment to allow that to kind of like flourish is just going to have people being like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Like, where aren't they going? And the gas station car repair is as long as the gas station car repair is under your control, they can just do that. But if it's not under your control, anyone who leaves dies. They just die. I don't, because now I kind of have to think about it, right? Because the purpose of the game, essentially, is trying to save as many people as you can but will inevitably everyone will die except for you. However, if people leave, then you're not the last one alive. The people who left are the last one alive. So, how would the mimics react to that? Because there's a order the way that these mimics work. They stalk. They kind of observe, they learn behaviors, they learn how to mimic voices as far as the reasons behind them. Very intelligent, and they prey upon humans being social creatures. And then they ambush, then will utilize what they've learned to try to get other people to them, in which they will then continue to ambush until the last person, what they feel is like the last person to arrive, and then they will stalk that last person, and then the cycle would continue. But in the scenario that they actually get away, it kind of, how would they react to that? Because the reason that you're the last one alive at the end of the game is so that the next place you go to will be the next mark for them to take over. And that's kind of the dreadful moment there, where it's like, you're not going to get killed off, but you are going to be the reason why other people die. And I don't know, if other people leave, then they have no reason to have you be that scapegoat anymore. You are essentially the Trojan horse without your awareness. Well, at least in the beginning, you weren't aware. Probably at the end of the game, you're like, oh no, this sucks. But if you're not the last, if other people have left, then they would probably just stalk them. Or would they be able to? No, they would be able to. I was thinking like, well, maybe they can't follow it because they were in a car. But our main character came in on a car. And that's how they got into this place, is that I keep saying she. I might just make it a she. The main character was in an accident. I'm not going to go into description as far as what kind of accident or where it was located. All we know is that they were in an accident, and then they came back to work at the 911 operator facility to continue working, but it's been a hot minute, so there's like a brief training period before you hop on and do what you're doing. And then the person who helped you in the building, because the main character is in a wheelchair, there is another person who helps you into the building. That person goes home, and they become the first victim. And if anything, that's the most consistent the game gets. From there, it's more random as far as how it proceeds. But if people leave, then they would just chase after those people. They wouldn't have a need to keep the main character alive. And it wouldn't feel good to just have a gas station car repair, and then to prevent this weird narrative loophole, we were like, oh, it breaks immediately. You know what I mean? They took it over immediately. And if that was the case, then why would we even add it in the first place if it's not part of the equation? We could have it early. We could have it early enough, like close enough to the original spread, where like by the time people are gonna try to leave, it's too late. Kind of like that false hope kind of deal. 100% a gas station needs to be a thing. How are they dying? They're being ambushed in their homes. They're essentially, the mimics are breaking in, and then killing them in their homes. Most likely through violence, like physical violence. Not necessarily anything super crazy more than that. I don't think I'm gonna go down the bear. I forget the name of the bear. I even forget the name of the movie. Where it like mimics the sound of the woman that it ate because it ate the throat. How would they escape? Well, that's the thing, is that if the person is being attacked, the only way to escape is for the player to send the correct amount of police force to their location in time. Thus, the policemen are able to chase, basically, like, they're never able to kill the mimics, but they're able to defend a location where the mimics have to then leave and then go to a different location. In which then the people who manage to survive that have a decision to make, right? And the original idea was they decide to either bunker down or leave. But now I'm questioning the leaving part of that, as far as how that would work narratively speaking. Corral them? Well, they're maybe. That was one of the ideas. It was a combination of potentially the community center being the case where you bring everyone together. They no longer need to be in their homes. Civilians report to blanket after attack. But then I kind of thought of like, do I want to give the player agency to move people around? Right? Because that adds an extra layer of complexity as far as gameplay goes. Because we could do it that way. And as far as being able to communicate with the civilians, it was the cable company, news network, as far as putting out an emergency broadcast. And there was discussion as far as utilizing that, in which you would have a handful of people who would listen. You would have a handful of people who wouldn't believe the broadcast. And then you would have other people who they're just stubborn and just would refuse to leave their homes. So that is an option to move around, to move down. But as far as like post-attack, the main response that I was planning on implementing was that they would then go to the hardware store and then like bunker down, increase defenses, and then even then when they get attacked a second time, there's like an increased amount of time before you even have to worry about it. I don't think I'm gonna make any houses like immune, because again, this is a battle of attrition. But at the very least, do that. Part of the confusion as to why wouldn't they follow someone else out of the town? Like, that's part of the dread. Part of the confusion as to why wouldn't they follow someone else out of town? Do you mind going a little more detail with that? I'm not 100% following. As in, like, when they see other people leave, why wouldn't they also leave? Kind of thing. Well, herd mentality does happen. Oh, yeah. Well, the original problem I had as far as people leaving is the fact that as far as the monster is concerned... Oh, gotcha. As the monster is concerned, it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense that you would allow people to leave, and then the monsters would still leave you alive at the end of the game. Because then they had their last people. The last people alive left already. So there's no need to keep you, the main player, alive to then go to the next town, because they could just follow the people who escaped to the next town. So it's more or less trying to justify the monster mentality versus an actual, like, narrative plot hole. Well, narrative plot hole in the sense of it not meshing well with the rest of the theme of the game. Because I agree that it does, having people leave, thus losing people more quickly, does... Ooh. That is kind of interesting. Because your job is to try to keep as many people alive as possible, because the more people that are alive, the slower the spread. But if people leave, that technically quickens the spread. So as the player, do you want them to leave? You probably wouldn't want them to leave, but you would want them to live. Which means to leave. But the player can't leave. Because they're in a wheelchair. Which is why, or at least that's the justification that I'm having for the main character, why they just don't get up and leave. It's because they're in a wheelchair. Yeah, I don't know. It's something that I'm gonna have to think more about, I think. Because I do, a gas station in a small town has to be there. Does it have to mean that people get to leave if it's there and not leave if it's not? I like that mentality, but I'm not 100% convinced on the ability to leave at all. But at the same time, there would then have to be a reason why they couldn't leave. I mean, we could go down the route. What was it? 30 Days a Night, I think was the name of the movie. Where it's like, when things popped off, they already sabotaged the way out. So like the game, the game would start with the first person dying, and at the same time, the gas station explodes. So it's like, it's there, but it's not part of the gameplay. So it's like, oh yeah, no, we had a gas station, but it's no longer usable, and it's not even needed to add to this list in the sense of something that is interactable gameplay-wise, and instead it is used in a narrative scope to show that people cannot leave because there's not enough gas to get out? That would only really make sense if they're really in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. And like, the only gas station to get to have them get out is in the town. And if you don't, if that doesn't have it, then you're not leaving town. That's a little much. That's a little bit much even for me as a narrative stretch. We'll come back to gas station. Alcohol store. I was originally going to put it as a narrative slash gameplay. Well, should I do narrative slash gameplay? The idea was the people calling had slurred voice from drinking, thus adding difficulty, because you don't know if they're slurring because they're drunk, or if they're slurring and that's a sign of them being a mimic, not 100% like pretending that it's drunk. Like, it's easier to mimic a drunk person, I think, than a sober person. You don't have to worry about making sense as much. So that was kind of the idea with the alcohol store with that. But it's kind of similar to the general store where it's just like, So let's really dive in a little bit more as far as alcohol store and general store. I'm noticing a hole as far as potential use here, as far as between the gas station, car repair, alcohol store, and general store, in that we're gonna have to figure out something that could fill in for the roles of places that wouldn't really be filled with anything. Or, I mean, not in the sense of like what doesn't have a whole lot of worth. So we need to give it worth. But I don't know what or how to go about giving it worth. Where it's like, if we lose the general store, originally, if we lost the general store, it was because it had multiple connections. So then they have a way to like get to a lot of different places at once, thus increasing the likelihood of spreading. But then I kind of fell short as far as like, well, how would the call go? And I remember coming up with the idea that it was an automated security call, where they would, like, now an operator would receive just a robot call saying like, general store on blah 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 this is a call for a security break-in on blah blah blah. Hey Lux, welcome back. And then you have to decide like, oh, it was broken into. Was it broken into because it was a mimic, or was it broken into because like Frank, the homeless guy, was trying to get food, or what? And that's kind of interesting, but only kind of. Like, it's not as interesting as an ice cream music going in the background as they try to check out an abandoned car in a park, or a laundromat where they're trying to hide behind a bunch of washing machines, and then the alarm goes off. Well, that's pretty cool. What did you decide on? And then the church is like, we could play with the church graveyard is actually might be the weakest of the bunch as far as spooky locations, but like, there's something that I feel that we could potentially plug in here that would really, it's like we're 90% there. We just need the last 10% to just tie it in a nice little ribbon. That would include the ones that feel like they don't impact enough. So I'm trying to think. What would it do? What would it be? Keanu Reeves pistol? Good to know. Well, if people are trying to get out and or people trying to bunker down. As we saw with the whole no escape, is that your vote, Lux? No one can get out? No future. So let's think it through, logically speaking. So I have just experienced something out of what I thought was possible. I saw something that looked really creepy / scary. We're not going to show it in game. We're going to use the theater of the mind in this case. That tried to kill me and sounded like someone that was important to me and used that as a way to ambush me. Right? Like it sounded like my neighbor, it sounded like my wife, it sounded like my kid, something. I don't know if I'm gonna make it be able to mimic animal noises. I don't see why it wouldn't. If it can mimic a human, I don't see why I wouldn't be able to mimic a dog. And then luckily the cops came. There were enough of them and it ran out. I don't know if it's gonna come back, but I want to make sure that I'm safe through the night. So I go to the hardware store to bunker down and to get like wood, get like power tools, like really make it so that like I board up my place. And now if they come back, they're gonna have a real fucking tough time getting in. But that also means I don't know how long I'm gonna be there. Would I also go to the general store to stock up on food and resources? So then I don't have to worry about leaving my home and I can board up everything and not have to worry about leaving my place in order to get resources, because I don't know if it's a nighttime only thing or if it's a daytime only thing. Would I want to risk leaving and going to the general store, or would I just board everything up? I don't know. Because good news, bad news, as far as like living through the COVID shutdown and seeing how people like reacted to it. Like when people are like, oh, I can't leave as often, I'm gonna stock up. Right? So like, when you don't know how long you're gonna have to stay in your place, you want to stock up. So we could have the hardware store, but then we would essentially have two things, right? We would have two locations that play the same role, which is people would go to one and then the other. We would need a reason, or at least some kind of gameplay positive negative here as far as a difference between the two, because we don't want a situation where you need both in order for them to bunker down, and if either one fails, then they just die, because then at that point it's like, oh, the general store is gone, so the hardware store is useless now. I don't want situations like that, where it's like it's a requirement to have both. So if the hardware store would give people an extra layer of defense, what would the general store do? Sanity? I'm just trying to think. Like, do we want a sanity meter for these people? Where it's like, if you lose enough sanity, they start making really stupid decisions? Where they end up killing each other instead of the mimics? I mean, we could take a chapter off of the thing, right? When you have situations when the people that you know and care about and you can't trust them, people start killing people. Innocent people die. Because there's a potential here was also a gun store. But I decided against it. But the idea that a good number of these people are going to have guns on them are pretty accurate. So as far as a potential reason why people would go to the general store, it would be to stock up before they bunker down. Is that it? Is that all the general store would allow? Is that all the interaction that a general store would have? The only other thing I could think of is like, on the way out, people are going to go to the general store so they can get road snacks. No one's breaking into a food lion on the way out of a place that's being overrun by mimics for road snacks. Wait a second. Wait a second. Are you sure? I do have some shred of belief in humanity, as low as that may be. Road snacks? No. Overcompensating due to fear? 100%. But not road snacks. Plus, you would get road snacks at the gas station. There's no way you wouldn't. However, I just thought of an idea. What if... Because this was another thing that was in one of the other ones that I decided against. What if it's a general store / drug store? And Walgreens for their massagers. Defend myself with the massagers. They won't know what hit them. I'm thinking drugstore. Like, what if it's... Yeah, what if it's just a Walgreens, right? Where it's like a general store, drugstore combo. I was going to say also alcohol, maybe not alcohol. You can cuss them out. That would be hilarious if there was just like a feed of like what's happening in the town, and then it says like, neighbor number 7 knocked out a mimic with a massager. That'd be so funny. It's like a league game where it's just like pentakill. But I'm thinking drugstore, because you know what? What if they get hurt? They get hurt from one of the mimics. They were able to get... The police was able to get them chased out. But what if you don't have any emergency... You don't have ambulances anymore? That means they would then be like, I need to get this treated. So I'm going to go break into the drugstore so then I can get the necessary medicine to make sure that I won't die from this. Like, I'll get the first stuff for the first aid. I'm gonna get like antibiotics. Like, my kid is the mimic scared the bejesus out of my kid, understandably, but my kid has asthma and we don't have inhalers, right? And it's like, I need to get an inhaler for my kid, but the store is closed. We're gonna have to break it and get this over my kid. Now I can kind of see it. Now I can see them breaking into the general store, or need the general store open and not taken over, because now we're playing in the role of people can get hurt. And it's not just a hospital thing, where it's like, if the hospital gets taken over or you run out of ambulances, now people are going to be utilizing other things on the map to then try to offset or minimize the consequences of those being lost. That's not bad. That's not bad at all, actually. Gameplay. So we'll still have alcohol here. Dr. Skulls? What's that? Or did I miss the pun? Drugstore. And then we'll actually put that in gameplay focused. Hell yeah. Oh, my phone's charged anyway, so I need that off. Okay, general store gameplay. Once people will utilize the building for emergency health issues, expedited from loss of ambulance resources, ambulance resources / hospital loss. Yeah, it's a foot support, very important. Really? Hold on. Is it for like standing around? Dr. Skulls. Oh, it is a foot. Oh, okay, you put it in your shoe. Yeah. I wonder if Godfrey has that. You gotta come in at that last little bit, don't you, Lux? Don't go sniffing foot supports at Walgreens. You'll get kicked out. Yeah. Honestly, I like how that turned out. I'm fine with that. Because that's what I want to see. I want to see more of that, where it's like reasons you don't want areas to be taken over. Right? Now, we'll take a little bit of a caveat away from this, because I wanted to touch this while I'm thinking about it. And that is, let's see, where should I do it? We'll do it up here. And that is, what's the phrase I want to use? It's the relationship between true and false reports as far as scientific fields. So we'll do assumption table, I guess. I don't know the name for it. So you would have true and false, and then true and false, right? So this is true. You would have two different things, right? On going to the right are assumption, and going Not assumption. Is it accuracy? Oh, no. It is infection versus reality, I think is what it was. So you have true. Reality is true, but it's actually false. Means a false positive. And then I'm confusing myself here. Basically, we're just gonna just do true, false, positive, false, negative, and then false, right? Did we want false, negative? No, and then this is just false. There we go. I don't even remember what this was in reference to, but it was the idea that do we want to try to implement things where we kind of think reversely? Because we're going to have to think of, like, there are a lot of different ways to play a game. There's a lot of different ways to break a game, right? And it's like, okay, so the purpose of the game is to survive as long as possible. However, there may be some people who want to play the game where you lose as fast as possible. So and that's kind of like a reverse way of looking at it, but do we want situations in which people want to have that be infected? Will it always be a problem if infection spreads regardless of where it is? Like, it's always a problem when it moves forward. It's never not a problem. Or do we want unique situations in which actually having this place be infected is actually a pretty good thing? So in like kind of like the meta game aspect of it in design, I was thinking in the sense of having the infection only, like, you try to like purposely leave open houses that are really easy to defend, where they only have like one option or two other options that it could be. I mean, the defense against that is that in this game, though it's not really told, there are more than one mimic. Like, you can't just, it's not just one and then you just have it cornered and you're just good to go. It is, they come in from multiple aspects, so that's why it's more difficult to kind of pin down. But do we want situations that make it so that if that gets taken over, it's a good thing for the player? But I guess with the idea of false positive and false negative is the idea that, oh, you're assuming that house got taken over, but it didn't. And you assume that house didn't get taken over, but it did. Do we want situations where you assume that it is what your assumptions are? It's the opposite. On one hand, that would break assumptions. We're all about that. We love it. On the other hand, it would also mean that it would be really difficult to tell the difference. Should we have signs showing that it is a false report? I know in science it's also difficult to tell if it's a false positive, false negative. And a lot of times you can only see it once you have enough data to support the idea of like, no, this was a false positive, this was a false negative, or this was an outlier. But in such a small sample size like this, the only thing I can think of would be there are certain things that happen once a true positive or a true negative happens that suddenly don't happen. And you're like, wait a second. Like, let's use the example of hardware store, right? So hardware store gets taken over, and or like you defend a place, and let's assume you assume that you defended a place, and the policemen go, and the policemen don't die. So you're like, perfect, the place is defended. Now the person's going to go to the hardware store, and they're going to get stuff. And then suddenly they don't do that. They don't board up. They don't go to the hardware store. They just don't do what is normally happens when someone goes about it. And you're just like, wait a second. Why didn't they do it? And then suddenly the next house gets a pretty reasonable, like, oh, it's a mimic. And then it's like, well, the only way that this other house could have gotten attacked is if the house beforehand got infected. And it lets your guard down. But then I also don't really know what you should do. Well, what about this? We haven't really explored the idea, because the idea of, well, the process, rather. You get a call on your emergency phone saying, hey, someone's breaking into my house. Dogs barking. You hear glass breaking. You hear the sound of someone being mimicked in the background. Like, super obvious signs that there's a mimic. Like, there's a mimic about to kill this person. Then you wait a bit. Let's say your resources have been put elsewhere. You got this call. You know you need to send someone, but they're finishing up in different areas. You literally do not have anyone else to spare, and you just cross your fingers and you hope that you get there in time. And then you send someone too late. What happens when you are too late? We haven't considered that yet. And that we should consider that, because that is a very real and probably often thing that will happen, is that you are not on time. You're not there in time. And I don't want, at least I think I do not want. As far as I'm aware, we haven't. Yeah, dead. Right, but the mimic is there to kill the person and then take over that area. Brutal murder, death. Right. Yeah, the person would die 100%. But what about the people I send them over there for? As long as I allocate the appropriate resources, I don't think they die. The resources are lost when I don't send the appropriate personnel, and then it goes on a rampage, right? AKA enough police vehicles. If there's not enough police vehicle, it's like an additional police vehicle if I believe that it is a mimic situation. And if I do not send that additional police vehicle, then everyone who gets sent there is lost and I lose all those resources. Unless there's a fire truck. The fire truck is the only one that's lost if there's a fire truck there. But in a situation where it's too late, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, if it is too late, what if that becomes a false negative? What if they believe is like, yeah, we talked to the person. They chased it off. They had a gun. It's gone. But the person that they talked, no, already pretty much confirmed that these things don't look human. So unless they're just like, sir, are you okay? And he's just like, yes, I'm just shitting in the bathroom. Don't come in. It's stinky. Like, then it's just like, all right, he seems like... And then there's that false of sense of security of like, oh, that person's fine. We're good to go. I don't know. Is the fact that that's just another place that they can spread from enough of a negative? Or should there be... I don't think... Definitely not the normal situation where they get chased out. I don't think that's the case. Unless it does get chased out, but now no one occupies the home. But that doesn't matter, really. That just means that that house is like, don't send anyone there. Just whatever call you get from that house, just don't send anyone there. Actually, now that I think about it, what is the cost of having an empty house besides just, once you know it's an empty house and that every call from there is going to be mimic, what's the point? Maybe you still get calls and it floods your call list and you don't know which call is coming from which house. Flee to, yeah, certainly. Would I then just send police cars to just chase them around? That'd be kind of funny. I don't know if I want funny, but that is funny. They'd be like, I just want a place to stay. Flooding your call list might be an interesting kind of consequence of them occupying a house in which you have to sit there and listen, and then they'll be like, we're at this location. It's like, that location is an empty house. And then you wasted time that you could have been listening to another person who actually needs help. That could be something. I'm not 100% convinced on it. I like the idea of a false positive. I don't like the idea of the consequence of a false positive. The only other thing that I can think of as a consequence for false positives is because you flagged it as not a mimicked area, then that means the neighbors of that location are less likely to call? No. No, I don't like that either. If you are too late, just trying to think here as far as logically speaking, like just narratively, too few police don't investigate. Yeah, I mean that's the eventual like end game of this game, is that you just run out of resources. There are too many people calling, you can't send them all, you make mistakes, there's just too many problems, and you just do not have the resources to send anymore. And at that point, you just kind of turtle. You just kind of wait for the inevitable. So I get a call. It's a mimic situation. I have to wait until the resources are up. Resources get up. I send the police over there. The police arrive. It's been a while, so the mimic has probably already taken over the house. I'm suspecting that the mimic already took over the house. The policemen there are suspecting that the mimic already took over the house. So they go in with the mindset of, this is probably a mimic. Unless, too late, a bigger threat appears elsewhere. That's interesting. I didn't consider that. A situation where you go to the house and there's no one there. There's no one there. There's maybe a dead body. But the mimic isn't there anymore. So now you're just like, shit. The mimic's moved on to somewhere else. But as far as the monsters are concerned, that's not their process. The process is once they kill something, they call for help. They pretend they are the person they killed and they call for help. So what I would do if I was a monster and I took over a place and they know that they were being attacked, like someone was breaking in, and they know that there's a mimic thing happening, I would probably pretend to be the person who lived there, saying I was still fighting them. I would make it seem like it was like they got there just in time. So the police rush to try to save the person. Oh. What if we lose one? What if we lose one policeman? So they pretend, so the mimic pretends to be in a scuffle still when it's been long over with. The policemen rush to try to get there in time because they know where it is. They could tell from the yelling where it is. They rush there, they go in, they're ready to shoot this thing up, and when they get into the room, one of them is ambushed and killed immediately. Because the reason that they're able to survive before is because the mimic is focused on the person they're trying to kill. They're not focused on the policeman. So then the policemen shoot, the mimic panics, and then runs. And then they move on to the next target. Or they'll circle back around to that house again later. But in this case, if you're too late, even with the appropriate Kevin McAllister mimics, hold on. Kevin McAllister. Yeah. Just Home Alone traps. That's also an interesting decision. Do we want them to set traps? Obviously, they're ambush predators. They have... I want them to be intelligent enough to be able to, like, mimic and understand social cues. Well, not understand social cues, but at least, like, they have the intelligence to absorb behavior of other things. I don't think I want to give them the kind of tool-making intelligence similar to humans, though. Because that also gives the, like, inadvertent hint that these things have like human hands, or at least like dexterous fingers. You know what I mean? And I'd rather not give these guys any, like, or the player any indication of what these mimics look like, besides just horrifying. Granted, I think like human hands or human-esque terraform the living room. We might. Sounds like we're going Dead Space here. Not that I'm not a fan of that. Because originally I had these monsters be living in caves where they would mimic the sounds of people that they know their target cares about, ambush, kill them, and bring them to the caves where they live. I don't see them as terraforming. Yeah, I don't think I see them as them like changing their environment. But sending them too late, even though you send the appropriate... So I do like the idea of having at least the logical progression of you send them too late, you end up losing one of your resources, even though you sent the appropriate resource. Because you were too late on it, you lost it. But we need to continue the train of logic. We can't just stop there. So that means the player, if they suspect that they're too late, they're not gonna send resources there anymore. Because you just lose some of your most valuable stuff. So you're not gonna send anything. Do we want that to be a logical conclusion of, especially when you don't know how long it is before it's too late? We haven't decided that yet. As far as how long do you have? Do you have a minute? Do you have 2 minutes? Do you have 30 seconds? Like, how long? When left alone, it then is able to kind of spread into the neighboring locations. It increases their range of what they're able to go to next. And you also have less people, essentially, to like help prevent them from, well, in my mind, the people kind of create this like resistance where it's like they still spread, but they don't spread as quickly because they're trying to kill people, right? What if we make it so that any place that gets taken over, they're able to move along that line really quickly? So it's almost like this kind of chain that, as long as the chain is connected, they could just go from where the house they just were, and they can go all the way to the other end of the chain relatively quickly. Whereas if it's a new location, you know, there's the calls of the 911, and as well, it just takes a while to actually kill whoever lives there. That could be interesting. Because then it gets slowly more and more chaotic, and the choices where they could be become more and more complex. So it's harder to figure out what's real and what's not just from location based, which I want people to kind of make assumptions of, where it's like, oh, this is a call from a house that's nowhere near any of this nonsense happening. It's probably not a mimic. I don't mind breaking that assumption every once in a while, don't mind you, but I think for the most part would be a fairly safe assumption. I kind of like it. Am I in love with it? Not necessarily. Will the player know the population count? No. The player will make assumptions on what houses have been taken over, and I'm thinking about giving the player the ability to... I think I labeled it as Minesweeper flag. Where it's like, right click, determine that this house is taken over, like this has been marked as being a mimic location, this is marked as being a mimic location. And you, I think, maybe giving the player the ability to see what possible connections there are. I'll either probably make it fairly obvious as far as like down the road or across the street. But another part of me is like, well, what if we like create lines that are like highlighting, pointing like the house, these are the options of this location, and thus giving them a little bit. Because it's a horror strategy game, we have to find a really good balance between giving people information and then not giving people information. Because the horror is the lack of information and the strategy is giving information. So we need to figure a good thing. I don't think giving them population count, that's too much. That's too much information. Because then you would see it click down and you're like, wait, why did it click down? Wait a second. Hold on. Granted, in that case, it would be like, it could have been a population click down either by people running away or by dying, but so we could potentially play along with that, but I would find it difficult as an in-game reason how you even know about the population count. That seems like something that is just added to the game to give the player the information, but it is not digestible. Or ingestible? What's the word I'm looking for? There's a word where it's like it's kind of like Dead Space, where it's like all the menus, all the interactions in the game are in the game. Like they feel like they belong in that world. So I want to try to stick with that as much as possible. So unless we got like a life, we have all these guys chipped. I mean, we could do some. Ooh, that could be kind of fun. What if we had all the animals are chipped, so then when the vet goes out, we could see where all the dogs and pets go. we could just see them like move around, and then maybe they like chase after things. That would be kind of funny. Obviously not very horror, but it would be interesting nonetheless. So, following the logic of if you send something that you're too late on when you don't know what the timer is, and you end up getting punished for it by having resources removed from you, that means players are going to be a lot more adverse for the risk unless it's an immediate, you're well within that limit and you have the resources available then and there. I don't think I want to create a situation where it's like it tells you that it was taken over, where it's just like you were too late and then the house just goes red and it's just like infected. Like, no, I don't want to. That's showing your cards a little much there. But you wouldn't send it. So the house is most definitely infected. So then you would ignore the calls for help. But then that would mean the neighbors would know. Do you hear about losing resources? Yes. You do hear about losing resources. That is one of the things that will be told to the player, is that, like, I'm planning where it's like, it's on the bottom right corner. All the images are there, as far as, like, it would be, there's a couple of, like 6 police cars, 4 ambulances, and like 3 fire trucks. I don't know. And then whenever you lose one, it will go gray. You, the player, would definitely know when one of the people that you send out are dead. They're gone. Because I feel like that would definitely be something you would know. Either you would hear it over the radio or the phone happen, or like you would, the vehicles are definitely tagged. They would be like stuck there, like at that location, and wouldn't be moving anymore. So losing the resources is definitely something they would know. Or unresponsive. Interesting. Unresponsive. You might be on something there, bud. Unresponsive. So that would mean that you could potentially have a chance to save. Oh, well, instead of gray, that too. But I like the term unresponsive, because what if you could save some of your resources by sending an ambulance to then save some of the resources that you would have normally lost? But it could be a trap, and you have to send even more police to make sure that the ambulance doesn't immediately die. Because that would also play, that is how these mimics would do it, right? They called for help, send a teen. Bro, what if some of the calls that we get is just like, bro, I know exactly what's going on, all these mimics happening, let me help. Let me join the squad. We just hire a bunch of teens that are like the mimic hunters. Oh my gosh. I mean, we were already considered a fourth resource called, what was it? It was essentially like a bunch of SCP nerds who have looked way too far into this kind of stuff, and like will help feed the main character like hints as far as behaviors and things like that. But I decided against it because I wanted to stick with like minimum viable product, and I was like, that would be really fun to add in, but I don't see that as something that we could do within the timeline we've been given. But I don't know, being able to recoup some, they will arson to stop an infestation route, and then you can send fire trucks to stop the fire if it goes too far. That's interesting. That's not bad, bud. Because like before, as far as like fires go, I was utilizing the fire trucks as less deal with fire control than it was accessing difficult to accessible personnel as far as getting them treatment. But having like they really load at APC store. That's funny. But potentially, so like you brought up two very interesting mechanics. The first being unresponsive. So let's do potential interesting mechanics. Here, yeah, come on. Mechanics. Actually, you know what? I'm moving this drawing pad. I'll plug it back in when we're actually making the map. Hopefully we actually make the map today, because I think I've been working on this for 3 days now. But I keep getting sidetracked by all these good talk as far as trying to figure out the actual mechanics here. Potential interesting mechanics. The first one you mentioned was the unresponsive resources. Explanation. And it was that resources become unresponsive and potentially could be partially recovered, because these mimics, that's their job. They call for help and then they ambush the help that get there, right? That's their whole shtick, which means there's no reason why they wouldn't also utilize that same strategy to the help that would arrive. They would keep them, like, if they killed all of them, then that means there's less likelihood of more and more people coming. But if they at least kept some of them alive, that means it would drastically increase the likelihood of more people trying to come and save them. So they would want to do that. So that's why I really like this mechanic. It could be partially recovered if properly approached. And then you can recover said vehicle and personnel. And then the other one that you just mentioned is hiring civilians as resources. So now you really don't want people, leaving, and you don't want people dying, because the people in that town could help replace your lost resources that could then also be like killed, etc. Can replace resources, but in different ways. So we have, let's see here, we'll do example. So in the example that you gave that I liked was like the teen that will like use arson to stop an infestation route. For the most part, none of our resources are able to do that. As far as like how to stop an infestation route, how to like once something's been taken, it's hard to get back. So instead it creates like teens that are hired, utilize a much more chaotic approach, and can hinder what was already taken at a price that can be nullified if the right resources are available. Such as using arson to stop an infestation route, but can be maintained as long as there is a fire truck available to help reduce the spread of the fire. So now you're using one of your resources to then help another resource to reduce the negative effects of that. So you have resources that now can do other things that normally you wouldn't be able to do. We are definitely getting into the realm of maybe getting too complicated, but I am liking the idea of, because for the most part, keeping people alive the way that I have recently treated it is, sorry, there was a dog barking outside, is like meat shields. It's like, I want them to live because it reduces the spread, and that was about it. But if the people being alive allows the ability that once you lose resources, you can dip into that pool of resources as your people. So it's almost like, it's like using your life in Magic as a resource to do things, where it's like, if that hits 0, you lose the game, but you can take a riskier notion of utilizing the thing that you need in order to not lose the game as a resource to help not lose the game faster. Granted, we're not going into recursion. We ain't bringing people back from the dead here. But yeah, I like this. These are good ideas, bud. So this is just thoughts. So player sends people too late, lose resource. player doesn't want to lose resource, doesn't send resources, Mimic takes over location, continues to spread. I think it's just Mimic takes over location and continues to spread. I think that's it. It continues on its thing. When you don't prevent a spread of a Mimic, it's just the status quo. That's exactly what they want and what you're trying to prevent. You essentially gave them your pawn, right? In a game of chess. And it's like, well, I'm not going to risk my knight here, so I'm just going to let them take my pawn, and then I'm going to try to make sure that I don't lose as much more resources that I already had. Because we already discussed how that there's two different endings to this game. Because I see two different play styles to this game. One is what we intend, which is people send out the resources as best as they can to help prevent the spread of things happening. And then you have the turtle approach, in which you literally don't send any resources anywhere. And then you're the last location, but you have every single resource still available. What happens? Right? This here feels like the turtle approach in a way of like it would move the game more towards the turtle ending, where you are just the last one with resources available, but you either end the game with resources or no resources. Those are the two endings. Is losing not an ending? Losing is the only ending, but it's how you lose. There is no win con. There is just lose less quickly is the goal here. There is no you've pushed back the mimics and now your town's alive. It is a game of insidious dread where you feel like you have a handle on things and things slowly but surely go more and more out of control as your coworkers have to leave either by selfishness or selflessness, and the calls get more and more frequent. Your resources become less and less available until eventually there is nothing you can do and you lose. That's the kind of atmosphere that I'm trying to make with it, is just the fight against something that you have no business fighting against, but you trying your damnedest nonetheless. And I want there to be, at the very end, when the office is silent and the lights and the lights are dimmed, I want the phone to ring one last time. And I want that phone call to be a little different depending how well the person does. Because on one hand, and also I'm doing fine. This is just I want to make a game kind of built around dread. In what I feel is that the not really the source of dread, but the core of it. And to me, dread is almost like a cousin of powerlessness, where it's kind of like there's stuff that you can do, but the phone game with access to calling you, that would be cool. That would be so cool to break that fourth wall. Unfortunately, I don't think it would work here, but I love the idea of just like the game is there and then suddenly the game ends and then your phone in real life calls. That would be The only way I would be able to do that is if like you ask for their phone number when you sign up for the game, or you like use a bot to like find that information or something. But that gets into a little bit skeezy territory that I'd rather not. Even it would be cool in this scenario, that feels like a breach of privacy. So it would have to be something that was voluntarily given, that doesn't feel like I'm only asking for your phone number because I'm going to call you. But I do love that idea. But yeah, so I want to reward people for lasting longer compared to people who last shorter. And a part of me is just like, well, what about leaderboards? What if I add leaderboards in there? But that's on my list of like potential ads, but it's not a minimum viable product. This game is still going to be the game without a leaderboard. But yeah, there's no winning. There's no winning this. There's no, like, as far as this game is concerned, the sun's gonna set, but it ain't gonna rise. By the time the sunrise is there, you'll be the last one, and you just try to last as long as possible. And I think if this was more of a strategy game versus a horror game, like it's a horror first, strategy second. If it was a strategy first, horror second, there would be a win con. 100%. It would just be a pushback, and then you just grit your teeth and try to make it through, and then you come to the other side triumphant. You pushed back the mimics, but you don't know how long, and then cut to credits, right? And then maybe at that point it's just like night 2 and it gets even more difficult, and you just like keep going that way. But I don't know. I'm just weirdly adamant that I don't want a win con. I mean, we'll see. Depending on the feedback that I get from people, it may be that win con is what this game needs. But for now, that's the direction where I want to go. All right. So, sends people too late, doesn't send resources, maybe takes over location, pro quo. You have the resources, but you lose the people. When you run out of people, you lose the game. So, I don't think there really needs to be much more consequence besides you move closer to losing the game. And unlike Magic, there's going to be no way to get people back. There's going to be a way to get injured people back with the hospital, or potentially the drugstore here at the general store drugstore. But there's going to be once people are dead, they're dead. Laundromat, that was a narrative. In which people creating a tense location, which people try to hide, but to no avail. Is that really it for the laundromat? Could I combine the laundromat with something? Let's see. I know mimics can't go incognito, but what about a freak? What do you mean by that? As in they look human? Or are they just into feet? Would a person turncoat? Interesting. I love your out-of-the-box thinking, bud. I want you to know that. Would a person, after seeing all this, like identify with the mimics? Their character lore beforehand? The character lore beforehand, yes. I plan on having, like, for the most part, we'll have, like, the houses will be static. Like, the people in those houses will be static. Some people will be, like, out of town randomly, But for the most part, it's like the house that you know, there's a house that you know that has like a wife, 2 kids, and a husband, and the husband is like a just man child or something. Like there is that stuff happening, and I wanted situations from the call that I've dubbed Rambling Grandma, where she talks way too long and gossips way too much. It doesn't get to the point, and I want it to be frustrating for the player, but what she talks about will help you get kind of information that would be pertinent in determining if like what's going on in people's lives that you can utilize as like red herring or not. And I know that there was going to be like a stubborn old man where even if you bring out the emergency broadcast system to warn people and to have them try to defend themselves, he's just going to think it's propaganda and will refuse any and all help that you send his way as far as information. So the idea of someone turning turncoat isn't that far-fetched, where you have somebody who would false positives. So could the wrong 2 people interact, leading to someone siding with the mimics? What do you mean by wrong 2 people? As in, like, the mimic convinced the person that they're cool? Because I was thinking almost like cult-y, where they saw what was happening and they were just like, saw it as like an opportunity to go off and start killing people, and then like potentially blame the mimics, or like make it seem like it was the mimics, but it was really him. Spouse rivalry is where I'm going. Oh. So like they want to get someone killed. Fidelity rage. So it's just like they sick a mimic on someone. Kind of. Got you. Interesting. I like it. I don't think the mimics are smart enough to be reasoned with. Lying to the cops. What would they lie to the cops about? As far as just like, oh, it's totally a mimic. Or it's like, no, there wasn't a mimic here. I don't think the mimics would be smart enough to be like, oh, that guy's on my side. Or like the guy's just like, no, wait. I know a really good one to go after. If you trust me, I can give you an in. I don't see reasoning. I see them pattern recognition, but I don't see them having the reasoning to do it. Like the NPC would have their own use for the mimic. Almost like it's like, are we talking like chained up in the basement kind of deal? Where it's like they have a van and it's chained up in the van and they just drive over to their house location and then they just let it rip. And then once they're done doing their thing, then they just chain them back up and then go along their way. Is it kind of like that? My pet mimic. Isn't he cute? Because my brain, when you were mentioning as far as like joining the mimic side, I was thinking almost along the more of the lines of, oh, this is my chance. Oh. Whereas like, this is my chance that I can start killing people and I can blame it on the mimics. Where it's like, not only do you have mimics, but you have people using the opportunity of the mimic situation to then do some things that they could just be like, oh no, it wasn't me, it was the mimics. What do you mean? Thus kind of dipping into the false positives that we were talking about before, where it was like, oh, you think it's a mimic situation, but it's not a mimic situation. It's someone who murdered another person and is trying to pull it off of a mimic did it. I mean, that's a possibility. It's kind of a rogue fiction. Or rogue fact. Kind of like a rogue faction. Yeah. Kind of like a rogue faction. But that would be... I think that might be complicating the narrative a bit too much. At least what I suggested, as far as having a person that is also going around killing people. As far as being able to use the mimic so that they kill civility meter, I did consider a sanity meter. I do remember mentioning that at some point, where I was like, well, if we could have it so that the sanity meter, once it gets too low, yeah, people start doing really messed up shit. So as the night, because it would kind of go along with the progress or the idea of insidiousness and dread, right? As time moves forward, it gets more and more difficult because people also start acting less and less humane and more inhumane. But how would they use it? How would you use... Let's say I'm a guy, right? Let's say I'm just a dude, and my wife cheated on me with my neighbor, and man, I fucking hate that dude. And there's these mimics going around killing people, and I'm like, oh, we could use this. And I want the mimic to kill my neighbor. Not to kill me, but my neighbor. Or maybe I don't even care about dying. It's literally just, I want him to die first. How would I guess what I would do is that I would unlock their doors. It wouldn't let hold on, it wouldn't let you say cook. Hold on, let's see if it's on mine. It didn't show up on my end. But yeah, I would probably unlock their doors. But how would I unlock their doors? I was gonna say, like, potentially I would unlock their doors, or I would sabotage their car, or I would... Well, it depends how messed up I want to go about it. Because another thing is, like, not cook. Gotcha. Like, oh, got you. Cook. Oh, I follow you. But no, if I really wanted to mess with them, I would break in to their home, or at least break their window, and then they would call the cops. But then I would just go back to my home. The cops would come, and then there would be like, yeah, there's nothing here, you're fine. And then they would drive off on their way. And then I would hope that with them, the windows are now broken, so it's easier to be broken into. And the player and not even the player, the 911 operator already sent people to their location thinking it might be a mimic thing, and it wasn't. So I would hope that when a mimic does show up, they are less inclined to send the appropriate people over. Kind of giving like the boy who cried wolf situation, where it's just like I would keep on making them think that a mimic is going in, but it's not, so that when it eventually does, they aren't properly prepared. But even that kind of feels... I mean, a part of me wants to say just throw some raw meat in their backyard. Try to tempt them. Try to tempt them with like some treats and be like, hey, look over here. There's some deliciousness. And they're just like, yeah, some guy is like rubbing raw meat on our windows. Like, I don't know what that's all about. Well, one of the places I did consider in the small town was a butcher. So if we have a butcher, and let's say the neighbor has been fucking the butcher's wife, and he's like, well, I got a lot of raw meat in the back. Let's see how much those mimic guys like some extra meat. And then they just proceeded to kind of like throw and or wipe and or place a bunch of just treats for them to like purposely go into that location. That is interesting, because in a gameplay perspective, what that would do is almost like create a radius around the house, where it's like, okay, anything within a certain amount of radius, if they get infected, they will just go straight to this house. Yeah. And when you're kind of like being like potential connections of where things go, and then I mentioned it before, where it's like if there's one that's just out of middle of nowhere, a lot of people are going to assume that that's just a false. It's like, if there's no way, right? But in this case, because of the sabotage, suddenly this house is getting attacked a lot sooner than it should have, because someone sabotaged it. That's interesting. There's only one potential issue with that. I do like it. Anything that increases a depth of character, I'm a usual fan of. The only potential issue that I see with this is that the first time the player comes into contact with this, because every person in each house is stagnant, they will now know to look out for that, and it's no longer like a factor anymore. They'll learn that, and they're like, oh, okay, I just need to keep an eye out for that from now on. And that would be the end of it. And I don't want to be that predictable. I want the rules to be easy to follow and the mechanics to be easy to implement, but I don't want to be predictable in what is going to happen in the experience of the player, and focus more of emergent storytelling as far as how the journey of the mimics go through the map and the way people react to it. Now, what we could do is play a little bit on the random button and make it so that maybe a handful will randomly be chosen for having beef with each other. Where it's just like, this neighbor now hates this neighbor for this run. What they do, it depends on what the person is. That could be potentially interesting. That makes things a lot more complex than it probably needs to be. I certainly don't want a situation where I have to write scripts for each person having beef with every other person. That sounds just like a bad time. But I do like... I'm going to say beef I'm gonna put this in quotations. I also like it kind of coincides with just leaving beef out. One of the civilians randomize who has a baby. Why? Why the baby part? Their ferocity? Oh, are you saying the babies are really delicious? So it's like, that's what really gets them going? I don't know about that. I feel like babies are not very nutritious. One of the civilians. Well, I was actually planning on having the hold out longer. Oh, not the ferocity of the mimics, ferocity of the parents. Is that what you mean? That makes sense. They have someone to protect, so they hold out longer. One of the civilians has beef, has conflicts with a neighbor, and will... That is... I did not type that many ands. What is going on? And will... conflict with the neighbor and will sabotage... What's going on? Why are you so delayed? Hey, yo, you good? My stream is fine. What happened? What's going on? Why is there such a delay? Sabotage. So conflict with the neighbor will sabotage so that the mimics will attack them sooner than anticipated. Okay. As far as randomized babies, I think for the most part, because a lot of the relationships and interactions have to deal with certain family members, I wasn't planning on randomizing any of the kids or like anything like that, just because I wanted to keep my number as far as I was kind of calculating as far as how I feel like the ratio of the age group of the people are, and then I took that to determine how many families there are, and then I took that to determine how many houses we need. So if we start randomizing babies, I mean, if I randomize the babies, it would literally just be like a handful. I'll think about it. I shall think about it. As far as people lasting longer because there's a baby, I see it's almost more vulnerable because there's a baby. Because then the mimic could pretend to be the baby. And that would just immediately get the parents killed. Like, immediately. It would be different if it was like a lot of these quote-unquote holding outs and fights are more much less of a they're like slugging these things in the face or using weapons, and more of a they're hiding and hope they don't get caught, or they get ambushed and died immediately. Because these are not fighters, they're ambushers, they're stalkers. There are no prolonged interaction. It is pretty much immediate. Yeah. So it's like having a baby, if anything, would during an ambush predator situation, is I would see more as a detriment than an actual a motivator to just kill this thing. Granted, I think a lot of people would be armed and would still try to kill this thing. I don't think I want situations where the civilians are able to get it, like, to make it run away. Yeah, baby loud. But I also don't know how sensitive babies are to, like, threats. I mean, these things probably don't smell very nice, so I don't know how sensitive babies are as far as, like, changes in environment, as far as danger. I have not had a child, so I do not know, or been in danger around a child, so I do not know. Okay, Cable Company News Network gameplay, and it is sending out an emergency broadcast system alert to notify and warn people not to trust voices of their loved ones or neighbors. If you lose the broadcast system, you lose the ability to warn people. Only a handful of people will actually listen to the broadcast. Others will ignore it for multiple reasons. But I also like the idea of during the night, or as the night progresses, the news. Actually, this kind of touches what you mentioned before as far as population count, bud. I think having the news cover like things happening in the town would be pretty interesting. Like, it's obviously, like, some of it may be true, some of it maybe not, but I like the idea of a disgruntled news anchor that just needs one big story to get out of that small town, and then will become a news anchor in a big city like New York, and they take this opportunity in this situation to just, like, try to get as much stories as they can. And, like, as the night progresses, the news covers, like, all the, not everything, but, like, as much as they can of the things that's happening in the town. But they also have a tendency to sensationalize it, so you can't be sure if it's real or not. Like, it's like that you'll fix a problem, or you know what happened, and then the news will come on, or they will go on it and start announcing. Yeah, exactly. This is my time, right? And then, hold on. Sorry, I forgot to mute. Hopefully my mic ate that. Anyway, I also like the idea that once the cable company / news network gets taken over, that means the mimics get to they get to send out false information for everyone. So then it's just like, you can trust your neighbor, go outside, leave your doors unlocked, like just really creepy, just like you can trust kind of things when you cannot trust. And then you just don't see the anchor on the screen. You just hear the voice of the anchor, like, poorly mimicked, as it tries to convince people watching to become more vulnerable versus less vulnerable. The news anchor will sensationalize what is happening, and if taken over, will spread false information to make people more susceptible. Yeah. see, this is what we need more of. It's like situations like this where it's like gameplay. If we could combine the gameplay and the narrative in the right ones, we can really make this interesting. Vet gameplay, if lost, will have pets loose in the neighborhood, and every call after that will have animal noises in the background and will not be able to be used as a way to determine if it is a mimic situation. So that one is kind of interesting, that it takes away one of your cues that is fairly dependable, I would say. Church and graveyard. Honestly, that one was just narrative. But maybe one of it wasn't. So like the narrative was just people walk in and their voices become echoey. That is literally echoey? Yes? I don't know how to spell echoey. Ooh, we got a thunderstorm! Let's go! If I suddenly go not streaming anymore, either my power went out or my internet went out. Just a heads up. Hopefully not. I'm on the same grid as a hospital, so usually I'm pretty okay. So looking at this, I kind of want to touch the church because there's something we could potentially do something here, especially what you mentioned, Bud, as far as like my first gut reaction as far as siding with the mimics. What if they were people who worship the mimics and they follow the mimics where they go, and they go to the town that they are currently attacking, and they go to whatever church is in that area and they worship them, and the mimics leave them alone, and because they are left alone, they believe that they are special chosen. But if there's a regular anchor, but there's a high chance they die early and are replaced by the ambitious, like kind of like a what's the word, an intern. Like there's a main anchor and then there's like an intern who's just like, I don't want to get around going getting coffee all day. This could be my chance. Kind of like power hungry youngster kind of deal. How would the anchor die? Is it mimic? Or what if the anchor is one of the first people that leave? Because an anchorman would know what's happening before other people would know what's happening, with the exception of maybe the 911 operator. So if I was an anchorman who has ears literally everywhere, and I hear some shit is going down in a real bad way, and it's like, oh man, my instincts are going off. I am getting the hell out of here. Fuck this place. I am gone. And then he leaves. That I could see. Otherwise, I don't know how he would die that wouldn't also have the ambitious intern also die. So I guess my follow-up question is, why go the route of the regular anchor being replaced by the ambitious one versus just having the main anchor be the ambitious one? I'm fascinated to see from your perspective what difference it would mean. Ominous omen. Ominous omen. You mean that he dies at home? So you want, so on one case you just on the hand that the main one is just ambitious, it's just an ambitious man. But in the with the idea of the main one being replaced by someone ambitious and the main one dies at home, it adds another layer of shit's going down. Things are not okay. That wouldn't normally be there if it was just the main guy. Okay. Kind of setting the tone a little more. Oh. I mean, there probably is a little lag. Sorry about that. I'm not gonna lie, the storm might actually increase the lag depending. But am I on the right track here as far as what I feel like is what you're saying, or am I off base? What we have on the moment type. Gotcha. So let's see. If I look, let's listen to it. Let's see. Okay. Use a moment. Okay. Let's see here. Names. It might be my computer. Why is there such a delay? Hold on, let me see. I don't see anything on my computer why there should be such a delay on my stuff right now. Interesting. Main... Bro, I'm gonna need you to stop this delay now. Main anchor dies at home. Intern anchor sees the opportunity and is hungry for their time to shine. To shine, thus making questionable decisions. Okay. Well, that's one of the reasons why I like this news network thing. There's a lot of opportunity that we can just play a lot around with. The church graveyard, though. Besides, literally just, I like the idea of making the sound echoey, but we could just do that at the abandoned building. We don't need it. But in a small religious town, would people go to church and pray? There's potential here. There's potential here because what if we play around with the voice of God and mimics? Right? There's something there where we can kind of like, people hear the voices or hear a voice and they believe that it is God, but it is in fact a mimic. Or maybe people would believe that the mimics have the voice of God, which is why they're able to mimic the voice of every human. I'm not in love with it. but there's something. I feel like there's something more than just an empty church that they look around and then they get ambushed in. Do people stay in a church for long periods of time? Hold on. Like at night, let's see here. Sure. Do people... Come on. Do people stay in church overnight? Bro, what? Stay. You know what? Hold on. I'm closing down the Elgato. What is going on? What is these spikes? Do people stay in church overnight? What is going on? There's like weird delay in my typing where it just doesn't do anything for 5 seconds and then everything gets typed at the same time and it's wrong. Or it says like I've inputted the same thing like 4 times. Weird. Weird. Spending the night in a church. They are special in their own way, but overnight stays in a church are an extra appeal. So it looks like a lot of things are coming up are like having homeless people stay the night at a church. Some churches take in refugees and give them sanctuary. Interesting. Sanctuary might be something to play with. Because we covered the idea that when coming across where your home is broken into and you don't feel safe in a place that was your home, it is the place that you should feel safe, the most safe, and now you don't. You bunker down so that it feels safe again. You run and get out of town. Or you would go to where you would feel safe. So if I lived in a small religious town, I haven't said if they're religious or not yet. I haven't made that decision, but at least from my own biases, small towns tend to be more religious than not small towns. Let's see. Let's check my biases. Are small... I'm going to have to type really short, apparently. Are... It's been 5 seconds, computer. I'm going to need you... Are small... Bro. What is this? What is causing this such bad lag? Are small towns dying? Wow. More religious. The notion of hyper-religious rural America, one that stands in direct contrast to the modern and secularizing urban America, is pervasive. But the numbers just don't support that stereotype. Ooh, good flash. Factors like income, race, partisanship, age, and education influence religious attendance more than geography does. Got you. Okay. So it is a complete bias from the looks of it. Gonna sneeze. Excuse me. I tend to sneeze when I run the dryer, and I ran the dryer today, so I got all that fluff in the air. I should probably open a window. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that they can't be ultra religious, but just because they're a small town doesn't mean they are religious. So we will say that there's a certain percentage of the population that are religious in this town. It would make sense that they would go to church. Would it also, especially that these things, people don't know what these things are. We're calling them mimics. We're calling them imposters, right? But these people don't know what they are. So what we need to do, or what would they assume? If something was mimicking people that I cared about and I was religious, and then I was saved by the policeman that came in, what would I assume was the thing that tried to kill me? And I think I would think it would be a demon that tried to kill me, right? I am a religious person. I don't like watch analog horror YouTube videos. You know, like I would assume that was a demon. So that means I would also assume that in the house of God, I would be safe from the demons. So now we're kind of running in a similar situation with the school and community center, where the church and graveyard may play a role in where people go to. Would people bunker? People go where they would feel safe, and they would, or run. Potential place where people will go to feel safe. But I also would say that about the community center / school. Come on, computer, you good? What's going on with you? Is it my keyboard? Maybe my keyboard's running out of battery. School. Okay. Potential place where people go to feel safe. Because we have to think. So now we have community center / school, which is a potential place where people would go safe. You would have the church where people would feel potential to go safe. You would want people to go to the same place. Then you would have people who would bunker down. You would people who would run. Let's see here. Whoa, what? Why is the clicks off? My God. Y'all see this? Look at that. What? What? How did I... There is something wrong with my computer. There is something wrong with my computer. Look at this. What kind of black magic has made it so that my clicking is 3 down on Excel? All right, fine. You want to play that game? We'll play that game. So what was it that we were going to say? It was, we have places for people to go to, or people's houses get broken into, right? Let's actually make sure that everything is going on over there. Yeah, everything looks fine over here. I don't know what the deal is. People's houses get broken into. Per the broadcast, we tell people that to go to the community center. Why would we tell people to go to the community center? Because we want to have everyone in the same place so we could defend it better. All right? Is that the benefit of it? Is the idea, would that idea make sense? Would the idea of sending people to the community center make sense if everyone's being attacked by mimics? What would the benefit of that be? To have everyone in the same place. Because on one end, if you have everyone in the same place, then if that place gets taken over, everyone dies. Everyone's dead. But at the same time, if you have everyone in the same place, then it's easier to defend. Right? Because then you only have to send your resources to that one location, and that's enough. I don't know how I feel about it. I wonder... Let me look up something. Are emergency broadcasts customizable? A custom emergency alert system benefits your business in an emergency. What's this? Hold up. A custom emergency alert system for your business can be a huge benefit for your organization. The National Emergency Alert System is how authorized federal, state, and local agencies send alerts. The goal is to communicate the American blah blah blah. It's part of the National Integrated Public Alert Warning System that encompasses stations. To ensure that it's working in order for the actual emergency, communication is key in the crisis, and this doesn't apply to governments. Apparently there's a difference between making a custom one and then having an actual one, which is good. Government has created organizations to keep EAS working properly. EAS can be accessed to via multiple channels. So it seems that you can create one. You can create one. Okay. I was thinking, what if they weren't able to edit it and then it's set, like the auto complete for the emergency broadcast system was to make everyone go to the community center. I'm just trying to think that I don't think I want people to go. Like, what would you do in a situation where everyone's getting attacked, everyone's spread out? you want to reduce the amount of casualty as possible. What do you do to reduce the amount of dead? I think the first thing I would want people to do is to get out of Dodge. I would want people to leave before I would want people to just huddle in one building. Because putting everyone in one building, how would that be beneficial to defend? I don't know. Honestly, my head kind of hurts from all this thinking. Well, potentially what we could do is just remove the church and the school as possibilities. We could do that. But there's something there. There's something there. When it comes to the community center and school and the church and graveyard, there's something that we can do. Similar to how I felt about the general store, drugstore, which we actually managed to figure out. Let me see. Hold on. I look at some of the other buildings that we ended up scrapping. If we look, we have park, ice cream, hardware store, community center, hospital, school, abandoned, gas station, liquor store. Oh, liquor store. We're still don't know what to do with the alcohol, really. General store, laundromat, cable, vet, church. Oh, here we go. This is the big list. Hospital, school, general store / fresh food. It's pretty much assumed at this point. Power plant was a potential. Gas station, car shop, diner, liquor store, drugstore, park with ice cream truck, laundromat, vet, hardware store, cable company, church, community center, abandoned buildings. Gun store, that was crossed out. I also crossed out haircut. I think fresh food was how I went about butcher shop. It was like a bakery / like fresh meat location. Because I know I was like, oh, what about the butcher? And I was like, I knew there was a butcher at some point. Okay, so the community, school, church / graveyard are all locations that you would want to go to get people together. In an emergency situation, do you want to have people together? I know in an emergency weather situation, you'd want to get people together because you want head counts. You want head counts. Okay. That's interesting. Because if you can get a head count, and then you get a call from a mimic, you can get a head count. You can confirm what people are there to then know that the person who called was a mimic. Interesting. Okay. That might be something. Because if you give... If you give it... If you give the people... If you give the people... So let's say normally you're not able to do a head count. Right? You don't know if they're alive, you don't know if something happened to them, etc. But what if these two locations, the community center / school and the church / graveyard, what if you could call them and you say, hey, can you give me a head count of who's there? And then they give you all the names of people who are there. And those people now, if anyone calls that are not at that location, you know are mimics. Interesting. I don't love it though. Because if we follow that nature of that, and let's assume, right? Let's assume we manage to get as many people as we can in the community center, and every person that is in a house is now in a community center or a church graveyard. And now you only have to worry about resource managing these 2 locations, and that is it. You have all your resources, doubtful, but let's say you have all your resources and now you only have to worry about 2 locations. There is no reason why you shouldn't be able to just defend them until perceivably the end of the game. Assuming that we move towards the idea that you need an additional police officer to handle the situation, and as long as it doesn't require more than 3 to handle, or 2, 2, you could just send 3 permanently to each one of those locations, and then it will forever take care of any and all mimic situations from those 2 locations. So, I don't think I like that. The idea is a feeling of being overwhelmed by the increase in calls. Creating a system that would reduce the amount of calls received and instead give you a feeling of comfort and security is antagonistic to the overall goal. Now, with this in mind, there should definitely be moments of security and moments of safety, and then there's an up and down stress curve as far as, like, as things get worse, it gets a little better and then a little worse. It's like, it gets a little better, but it gets a little more worse. So it's just a downward curve that eventually hits 0, but it's not a flat line. It wiggles. It's a wave. Where we give a little bit of power And that's why I like the idea of like being able to chase them away. Chasing them away and saving the people inside the house is a feeling of empowerment and making a good decision. Those are the ups. The downs is you making the wrong decision, or you just not being able to send the people either because you do not have the resources or you did not have the resources within the amount of time necessary. Having a center where people can go to creates a very large safety net that inevitably will lead to you prioritizing the large amount of people at the sacrifice of smaller people. Where it's like, oh, do I defend this house or do I defend this location with 14 people at it? And it's like, okay, I'm going to do the 14 people. And though that's a good moral quandary to take, it doesn't really push things in a... That is dreadful, having to choose between the two. However, eventually, there won't be a need of a choice. You're just gonna just defend the one. And then once there's one left, is it one police officer per mimic? And because there's so many different houses now taken over, before you were only handling one mimic at a time, but sometimes maybe there's two mimics at a time, so you need an extra police officer. And then it gets to the point where you have to choose between the church or the community center. And then once that's taken care of, like, what if there's 6 mimics and there's 6 cars, but you need 7 cars to take care of 6 mimics? So it's forever, you're never going to be able to fight them off. I mean, granted, that was kind of by design, but if it's literally that easy where it feels cheaty. It feels cheaty when it's from the numbers, you know, you don't stand a chance. Because it's a numbers game and you've already lost. It's like playing a rigged game. Which is also true. This is kind of a rigged game. Ooh, that one was close. So it is a rigged game, but I don't want it to feel like a rigged game. And that's where the magic is. You know, it's a game that no one wins, but you have to win as long as possible. So you have to make it as fair as possible until the point where it's impossible to win. Having it just so that, like, the resources are just not equivocal, like they're not equal, that, as soon as you see that, you're just like, oh, well, I didn't stand a chance in hell anyway, I guess. It's like, no, I want people to feel like they stand a chance. I don't want people to feel like they're immediately being overwhelmed just because of numbers. I want them to feel that they're being overwhelmed because they, even with the right decisions, they're just slowly gaining. Just a little bit. Unless you get pushed back a little, unless you get pushed back, in which you make a mistake, right? All in all, I think that means that utilizing the community centers slash school and the church slash graveyard are as like safe havens are antagonistic to what we want. So if that's the case, then why even? What would the game look like without them? So you would have a small town without a school, without a community center, without a church, and without a graveyard. And man, does that feel like it needs to have those. At the very least, a school, you know? What would it be? Hey, Shorsha, how you doing? Trying to figure out a well, not necessarily a puzzle, but trying to see how I can fit these points of interest in a meaningful way in the game. What are you up to? So we can't use them as locations to send people. But what can we do then? Relaxing studying for school. I hear that. Hopefully your studying going well. It was finals, right? Yeah. Best of luck to you. I'm so glad I'm not in school anymore. I still get stress dreams, by the way. Still, like, or I remember, I think it was actually just a few weeks ago. I had a stress dream where I was, what was it? It was, I want to say like, oh, I was gonna fail a class. Where it was like, apparently I didn't go to the class a lot. Whereas like, I didn't realize I was in a class because my schedule was so hectic. And it was like near the end of the year. And because I didn't go to the one class since the beginning of the semester, I was going to fail that class. And then because of that, I wasn't going to be able to graduate. It was a whole thing. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make up all that time? I need to talk to the teacher and make up all much work. And how am I going to explain that I didn't know what kind of I didn't even have them as a class? And then I woke up and I was like, oh, thank God. Thank God. I didn't have to deal with that. I graduated years ago. Oh man. School will do it to you. So, okay. So, we're not going to use the community center / school and the church / graveyard for safe haven. Though that would make the most sense. Or we would have to find a more interesting way to utilize a safe haven besides just sending people there and then it become antagonistic to what we actually want the game to move towards. Headcount was interesting, but that's about it. Now what we could do, I mean, it would, the dreams can for real be stressful sometimes. Recently had a dream where I had forgotten the homework that I was supposed to give to my physics teacher. He was gonna punish me, then I woke up. Damn. Is that enchantment script from Minecraft? Or is that Roman numerals? Because Nordic runes? Oh. Actually, now that you mention it, it does look Nordic. I saw the MIM and then I thought of Roman numerals. Okay. Yeah, no, stress streams about school, I think, is like universal constant. Either from classes or from like social. Oh, Did I watch Film Red? Well, what is the Roman numerals mean? Or not Roman, sorry. Nordic runes mean. I see little things on there, but I don't think they mean lesser than or greater than. There's no translation of them online as much as you tried. Oh. Still cool though. So if we don't want a safe haven, or at the very least a safe haven for a place for people to be safe, then what do we want a safe haven to be? Because when I think about a safe haven situation, I think people going there, they're freaking out. That's pretty much me as well. But then again, like, listen, everyone loves dinosaurs. They just can't admit it. Dinosaurs are cool. Doesn't matter who you are. They just don't want to admit it. What would it be? Actually, I need to grab a little bit more water. This is your reminder to stay hydrated, but I'll be right back. And I am back. Didn't take too long. All right. Okay, let's try to think of this logically. So, shit's going down. I am either instructed or compelled to go to what I feel is a safe location. I will go to that safe location in hopes that I will be safe, understandably. And that would either be community center / school or a church. And I am there, pretty much a sitting duck, but I hope that the authorities will be able to take care of the problem and hope that we're safe at that location. And then there's really nothing else I will do. I pretty much just sit and hope that everything gets solved. And that's about it. Occasionally we get calls from the operator asking for a head count. I don't know why they ask it. Or maybe I do know why they ask it. And I'd be happy to tell them that I am not a mimic or imposter or whatever. And that I am alive and well. Because sometimes you gotta put them in stuff, my guy. The NO though is a little crazy, but at least for a lot of these other ones, they make sense. Well, the heart, the card symbols are a little much, but at least the scientific symbols make sense to me. As someone who has made many a research paper, I did learn a couple of shortcuts just for those. I'm actually surprised Twitch like has that there and it's not just one of those squares. Honestly, yeah. Well, that's an idea. Miyazaki movies? I believe so. Hold on. Let me see. Let me see what kind of movies. Oh yeah, I watched Howl's Moving Castle. I've watched Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke. I saw. I haven't seen any of the more recent ones though. I haven't seen The Boy and the Heron or Wind Rises. I haven't seen any of those. Totoro? I don't think I ever saw Totoro. Not gonna lie. Yeah, I don't think I did. I know it's really good, but I just never saw it. I saw enough references of it. I honestly need to go back through those movies. It's so good. Maybe 2.5 tall plush of Totoro. That's honestly adorable. Let's see. We could have a potential mini game in the community centers where it's like, you said Five Nights at Freddy's, so I was like, well, what if we have a little like need to protect the center area full of people, so we have to go around and like make sure that the mimics don't get in. But no, making a game inside of a game within a short time span like this is not, it's not the way. What would it be? People go to a single spot. They bunker down. The mimics will definitely try to get in there. A part of me wants to say that in order to the bigger locations, you need to have more cops, or you need more cops for each one, but you don't know how many are there, so you just send in all of them just in case. I just don't want a situation where there's only one thing left, and that's a community center. Because then you'll just send all your cops there, and then, unless it is a numbers game, you just win the game. And that's just bad design. There's something with it. I just need to keep digging at it. There's something there. We just need to come up with a good enough reason. Because we can't have safe areas that bring in a bunch of people. because inevitably what that will do is that the mimics would spread everywhere around the town except those locations. And then you have only a very few locations that need to be defended as compared to a lot of different locations that need to be defended. And your limited resources become not so limited anymore. Actually, do you mind sending it again? Because I had it written down on the notepad on my computer and my computer reset. You could also like whisper it to me if you want to do it that way. I was actually hoping that you were going to show up today so I could ask you about it again. Because literally I had it all up and like I woke up the next day and my computer was just like, everything was closed. Everything was closed. I was like, no. And I thought it would, because it wasn't saved, like the notepad wasn't saved, that it would stop my computer from resetting, but it didn't. So I apologize, but if you wouldn't mind telling me it again, I'll check it out. And this time I'll save it. I'll actually save it. Yes, please. We'll save this as Shorsha recommendations. There we go. Because I tried to Google what I could remember, because I know you were talking about a DeviantArt thing for stuff that you've done before. And it was... and I couldn't find it. Popcross Studios. YouTube. Excuse me. Darn dryer. Merriweather Media. Lovecraft Girls. I still swear that Merriweather Media sounds familiar to me. And then it's also DeviantArt profile. Wait, did I find that one? Why does Louise sound familiar? Hold on, let me look. Okay. If you remember anything else, let me know. Why can't I find you? Did I spell it right? Hold on. It was S-E-O-I-O. I-R-S-E. Wait. I think I found you. Yeah. I like it. Yeah, I like it. Very, what's the word? It's like almost like Demon Dragon vibes is kind of what I'm getting. Yeah. Cool shit, dude. Keep getting at it. Yeah. I was really into Seven Deadly Sins as well when I was, I think like 16, 17. Yeah, I kind of figured, unless I was like, wow, you really got a lot better a lot quicker. All right, cool. There was also a potential thing where I just didn't spell it right. But yeah, no, it looks good. Some Lovecraftian monsters. Awesome, dude. I look forward to it. Feel free to post any of your art on the Discord. I have an art section for it. As long as it's not lewd. Unfortunately, I have to specify that. Okay, so yeah, once everything goes in, that makes your resources more valuable. But then you can have situations where you have enough resources to cover everything, but I do not want the ability to have, for people to have everything. Oh, what's the recommendation? What is it? It might be I just have to get rid of it. Oh, no problem. I might just be trying to force something that doesn't fit. I think potentially getting rid of the community center, the school, the church, and the graveyard. I don't see a way in which the utilization in a gameplay sense. We could go the easy way out, at least for now, and just have church graveyard have multiple connections. Gameplay. Yeah. This thing is for manga that I read online. It's a bit sus at times, but it's mostly enjoyable. All right. Dope. Love is 8 meters. Sherry's love is 8 meters. Interesting. Let's see. Love is 8 meters. Oh, it's 8 meters tall. Oh, got you. That would line up with you. Romantic comedy, written and illustrated. Okay. Well, it's a romantic comedy, so of course it's going to be sus at times. Especially a manga one as well. Let's see. I think that's what I'll do for now. Has many more possible connections than normal. That feels like such a cop-out, but I really can't think of another thing, another reason why. Completely removing it. I don't know. I recommend reading it whenever you have the time, since it's a nice distraction. As I said, a very enjoyable manga. All right. Thank you for the recommendation. I appreciate it. alcohol store. Or liquor store, rather. Hospital / liquor store sounds bad. I like the combination of a vet hospital, but I don't know. Oh, what's the song? All these are good. Ugh, my brain is mush. Okay, give me the context. Oh, yeah, I think I hit it. I think I hit the wall. I think I only lasted this long because of the caffeine, not gonna lie. I didn't, yesterday was my day off, but I didn't actually take the day off because I really wanted to finish the Dead Space YouTube video, which I did. It was released actually earlier today. It was my first try at like really trying to edit something. I thought it turned out pretty good. There's certain parts, there's some like parts where I feel like it's a little bit lagging a bit, but then there are other like transitions and things of that nature. I was like, this is good. I love this. I look forward to the next one. But for the rest of the week, I'm going to try to focus on making an overlay, so I'm not always blocking the stream. Kind of look around, get some inspirations, and that way also when I'm streaming, people can see the chat. It's a very long and beautiful yet emotional song. Hell yeah. Always enjoy those. So, since I got that thing done, well, I also need to make some more shorts from the video, so I only made enough for today. Well, actually, depending on the way I go about it, I have like 3 days before I need to make another short. Oh, hold on. It didn't send over there. Let me check over here. Okay. I was incredibly sad, and to this day I have some thoughts about that. He was such a good uncle. Finally, that's kind of funny. His favorite band was Pink Floyd. Shine on, you crazy diamond. That sounds so familiar. Actually, you know what? That's kind of interesting. I'm vaguely familiar with it. It's been a long while. I'll add this to your recommendations as well. I'll give it a listen. First of all, I'm sorry for your loss. Second of all, almost coincidentally, I think the last time I heard that song was when I was at a funeral in which their favorite song was that song. it was a friend of mine in high school, and he ended up passing away. I won't go too far into it, but it was a premature death. We'll just leave it at that. And I remember two things. Well, a handful of things. But one of the things that I do remember is he hated Mad World. Like the song. He hated that song. He despised that song. And it's funny because I personally like that song. But whenever I hear Mad Worlds, I think of him. But I vaguely remember listening to Pink Floyd at his funeral. I don't remember if it was Shine On You Crazy Diamond, but I want to say it was. I'll have to re-listen to it and see if it like clicks that memory. But I know he loved Pink Floyd. Yeah. No, it's one where I do my best not to carry that weight, you know? But that is a conversation for another time, and a much more somber conversation. But I'm glad you have a song to remember him by. I think that's very important. Yeah. And we always need a little bit of that, you know? We need a little bit of something that kind of gives us peace, especially this day and age. So I'm glad you found that for yourself. That's very important. What are we gonna do for the last 15 minutes? I guess we could try and draw the map. Because once again, we didn't do the map. We just talked about all the different buildings. No, not really. Guess we just vibe. We just talk. Thank you. I'll have to go to bed now. See you next time. I hope you check out my recommendations. I wish you all the best. Thank you. I will definitely check this out. And I hope you have a good night as well. Have a good night's sleep. Enjoy listening to the song. And actually, I might also just call it there as well then. I don't know what to pad the extra 15 minutes with, so I think I'll just call it. So, thank all of you who have joined me today. As much as I would like to say we progressed, we did progress, just not in the way that I wanted to progress. But sometimes life be that way. So, I hope all of you have a wonderful day. Tomorrow, we will play some more Alien Isolation, and I hope to see y'all there. Take care.